Okay, so I'm also have some notoriety as a guy who helped to start Critical Mass. Of course, people want to make one guy the guy who started it, so sometimes I'm called the founder, but it's really a misunderstanding of history to put it that way. Nobody starts something like Critical Mass by themselves, and inevitably there was several dozen people in conversation for months prior to its start, and me and a few people were more energetic about pushing it, but it happened finally, and ever since then it's reinvented itself in over 300 or 400 cities around the world, to the point where you now have thousands of people who are inventors of Critical Mass. And Critical Mass is a movement in which people on bicycles get together once a month and ride home together through the streets. It's a very simple concept, and that's part of why it worked so well and was so easy to have it self-perpetuate, because it's already in your life, it's already in your head. The idea that I'm going home on my bike, why don't I just do it with a bunch of other people, fill the street with bikes, displace the cars, and then at that moment suddenly we are traffic. We're not blocking traffic, we are traffic, and the pace we're going is the pace of traffic. And so that has been magical and beautiful, because it's not only about traffic issues, but it's about public space issues. And one of the crucial questions that we face as a society, whether in any given nation state or on a global scale, is really the demise of public space, the demise of the opportunity to meet and discuss and to think together in public about our public lives, our shared predicament. Everything's become highly privatized and individualized. And the drastic issues we face around climate change today, where the planet is really noticeably dying at an accelerating pace in many different ways. And I'm not a person who says the sky is falling. I think it could go on for decades and decades. I don't know, nor does anybody else. But clearly the evidence is worsening with every passing day. We get more bad news. And so from that point of view, the kinds of behaviors that we have to change in our everyday lives are quite a few different things. And one of the main ones is transportation. And so when people take the opportunity to say, I'm not going to wait for a big policy change by the government, I'm not going to wait for an electric bus system, I'm not going to wait, I'm going to change my life today, even though my little minuscule drop in the puddle is not going to do very much for global climate change by itself, but as a part of a global movement, a rise of urban bicycling, which is actually tangibly happening across the planet, particularly in the north, actually, interestingly enough. Because in the south, they've always had to use the bicycle. They don't have the money for cars, and the bicycle's been a prominent means of transportation for a very long time. And the scary part for the northerners is, oh my God, what if China and India and Brazil all have the same number of cars we have in the United States and in Europe? What a disaster. Well, yeah, it's already a disaster. Stop fooling yourself. It's already a disaster that we live that way in the north. And so those of us that have decided to break with that logic have chosen the bicycle as a way not only to reinvent our means of getting around in cities, which also then changes our imaginations about what cities are like and what's possible to do as an urban inhabitant, but it also has a deep logic of changing everybody's imagination about how different life could be. And we actually, the other thing I like to say about bicycling, which is really important in a world in which the media continually distorts or doesn't even present these kinds of ways of thinking, is the bicycle is an anti-spectacular device if you accept the notion we live in a society of the spectacle, in which life is represented to us by the media in a very false way, and the truth of our lives feels false because what we get over the media claims to be true, and it's nothing to do with how our lives actually are. So we all live in this kind of weird place in between where it's like, wait a minute, I'm not hearing my life ever on the news or in any way presented to me in the media. And when you're on a bicycle, instead of being in a car getting propagandized by corporate media, just Clear Channel and the networks, you're actually going along the street and you stop and you talk to your friends that you see on the sidewalk, or you talk to the motorist who's stuck in traffic as you whiz by them, or whatever, and you have this direct experience. You have a direct assertion of what's going on and finding out the facts of your life in a very direct way without any mediation by any sort of editors and back in a studio somewhere deciding what's allowed in and what's not allowed in. So I think there's a really vital and subversive function of bicycling through the streets at the level of our shared sense of the world we live in, and that we start to have a more direct and honest appraisal of what life is about, and not this madness that passes as news that we get in the United States.